If you received a text message from a colleague asking you to join their organisation on Hubfleet, you might be wondering what to do next. So we've put together this short video to help explain how to get started with the Hubfleet EWD. The first thing you need to do is use one of the links in the text message to download the Hubfleet app from either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, depending on the type of device you're working on. Once you've done that, when you open the Hubfleet app for the first time, you'll see the login screen. If you've never used Hubfleet before, you'll need to sign up using the sign up button at the bottom of the screen. This will open a screen that allows you to enter your first name, your last name, your phone number, and a password. The password has to be at least 8 characters long. Once you've done that, we'll also send you a 6-digit code via SMS, which you'll then enter back into the app, and this just confirms that we've got your phone number correct. Once you've done that, you can return to the login screen and log in. It's important to note at this point that with Hubfleet, you can log in 2 different ways. You can log in using the phone number and the password that you've just created, and that will work on any device provided you have an internet connection. However, because Hubfleet is designed to work in remote areas where there is no internet connection, we also allow you to log in using a device PIN. The device PIN only works on devices that you have set the device PIN for, so it's saved locally on the device. Because we haven't set a device PIN on this particular device yet, we're going to return and log in with our username and password. When you log in for the first time, the first screen you'll see is the driver details screen. This is where you need to enter additional information required to keep a legally compliant electronic work diary. This information includes your base time zone, your driver's license state of issue, your driver's license number, your driver's license expiry date, and your birth date. In addition to this, we also collect an email address. This email address is not required by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, but we use it in order to email you a PDF of your work rest records at the end of each shift. So you have a completely separate and redundant copy of your records. Once you've entered your entered the driver details, you can return to the main dashboard screen. To use the Hubfleet EWD, you must be connected to a record keeper. Connections between drivers and record keepers works through a process of invitation and acceptance. So the record keeper invites the driver and the driver must accept the invitation. You can find your pending invitations by clicking on the hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. This opens up the left-hand menu. You can see an option for invitations and next to it a number in a blue circle. This indicates I have 1 pending invitation. To accept the invitation, I click on the invitations option and I click on the blue tick next to the record keeper that's invited me. I'm now connected to that record keeper. I can see my list of connections in the connection screen, which is also accessible via the hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. So I'm now connected to 1 record keeper, XYZ Transport. The final thing you need to do before using the Hubfleet EWD is to set a device PIN. As mentioned before, the device PIN allows you to log in to the device offline in case you don't have a network connection. To set your device PIN, you again go to the hamburger icon in the upper left-hand corner of the screen and select the device PIN option. This will open up a screen where you enter your device PIN, you re-enter it again to confirm it. Once you've done that, we'll send you a 6-digit code via SMS. This ensures that it is you who's updating the device PIN on this particular device. Once you've done that, you'll see that a PIN for the device has been set and you're now able to use the device to complete work rest records, and you'll be able to log in and log off offline using the PIN that you've set. So you're now able to use the Hubfleet EWD to record your work rest changes. We've created a series of training videos that go into various detailed features of the Hubfleet EWD, and you'll be able to find these videos by searching Hubfleet on YouTube. But to get you up and running quickly, I thought I'd go through some key features right now. So the screen you're looking at is the Hubfleet dashboard. This displays key information about your work rest history. At the moment, for this particular driver, we don't have any work rest history to show, so it's not particularly interesting to look at. So we'll revisit this screen once we've made some work rest changes. What you'll notice though is at the bottom of the screen we've got 4 options. We've got a logout option, which is pretty self-explanatory. We've got a rule sets option, which if you click on will show you options to further select from the NHVR and WA rule sets, and when you click on those you'll get the detailed work and rest requirements for each of those rule sets. There's also a compliance view option, which again is not particularly interesting at the moment because we don't have any records to show, so we'll revisit that later. Now, to create work rest records in Hubfleet, you begin by starting a shift. So we'll click on the Start Shift button. That brings up a screen that allows you to select the record keeper that you're going to start their shift for. I'm connected to one record keeper called XYZ Transport, so I'll select that record keeper. I then choose my base address. Your record keeper might have multiple base addresses. So for example, if they have a depot in New South Wales and one in Queensland, there'll be multiple addresses here, and you can choose the one that's most appropriate to you. Alternatively, you can edit this base address and actually write one that is most appropriate to you. For now, I'll just choose the one from New South Wales. You have an option then to enter a COR partners. This is just optional. I won't go into detail on this right now. Your base time zone is then shown. This is not something you're likely to edit very often. If you do need to edit it, you need to go back to the driver details page to edit. Finally, you need to select your work rest option. So I'm going to choose standard solo for this shift. Then I hit the start button. I then enter the start time, the date, the place, which is brought up automatically. I can then edit that place if that's not appropriate or suitable. I enter my odometer. In this case, I'll enter 1000, and I enter my vehicle registration. So we'll go with 123 ABC. It's also important to point out that by default, the Hubfleet EWD start time is in the device time zone. So whatever time zone, so at the moment it's 12:36 on my, or 12:35 on my device when I loaded this page. So 12:35 is shown there. I'm actually in Western Australia on Western Standard Time. But my time zone is actually in New South Wales. If I prefer to enter my times in my base time zone, I can choose New South Wales as my time zone to enter my times, but I'll leave it as that for now. It shows my current status as resting, and I can either choose to maintain rest or to change to work. So I'm going to choose to change to work to start this shift. And because Hubfleet is NHVR approved EWD, one of the requirements is that we're able to fetch records from the other EWDs if you've worked on those EWDs in the last 28 days, and we can bring in a complete set of your work rest activities. So if you have worked on another EWD in the past 28 days, then you would choose yes, and we'd go and get your records. If you haven't, then you can just choose no. So I'm going to choose no because I haven't. The next screen will just display some information about your work rest history. So the top part tells you that you've got no breaches or no potential non-compliances in the last 28 days based on your work rest history. And then it tells you if you work a current shift to the limit of the standard solo rules, so the 5.5, 8, 11 and 24-hour rule sets, you won't create a breach. So it's giving you some information well ahead of time. So that all looks good. So I can start a shift, and when you start a shift, this is your main work rest screen. It shows your activity at the top and the duration of your activity. It then tells me when my next rest is due. So because and it tells me in two different time zones. It tells me my device time zone, and it tells me my base time zone. As I mentioned, I'm in Western Australia. What WA is 2 hours behind New South Wales, so I need to rest at 1750 in my local time, which would be 1950 in New South Wales time. We then have a countdown which shows the hours and minutes until you're required to rest and the reason for your rest. And in this case, it's the 5 hour 30 rest rule. We then have some information that related to your total shift. So my total shift time is 3 minutes. My total work time within this shift is also 3 minutes, and my total rest time is 0. And further below, it shows that I have no potential non-compliances. If you're driving, this screen could be a little busy and distracting. So what you can do is you can press the lock button here, and that will lock the screen into a view that looks like this, that just shows you the time left until you breach. So this is a sort of what we sort of have as a sort of distraction-free driving screen. You can then do a work rest change. Work rest changes are quite simple to complete, so we just hit the work rest change button at the bottom of the screen here. That brings up a screen where we can enter the start time for our next activity, the start date, the place, a new odometer value. So I'll say 1100 this time. My vehicle registration is remembered from my previous work rest change. I can put in a note as optional. In this case, it shows that I'm working and that I want to change to rest. So what I'll do now is I'll update to rest. And now the screen will say that I'm resting. The duration of my rest is a minute. And this is my shift duration. So 5 minutes total, 4 minutes for work and 1 minute for rest. All of the activities that you've done through a shift are stored in the activity card screen. So here I've got my work and my rest. Well, my first activity was a work activity. My second activity was a rest. Let's say that you made a mistake and you wanted to edit this. You can do by hitting the edit button at the top of the screen, by hitting the 3 dots at the top of the screen. It will give you an option to either edit that activity or delete that activity. So if I edited this activity, I could, for example, move the start time. Say I forgot to start my shift on time, I might want to move that start time to an hour early. I can say done. I can hit update. But one of the requirements of the NHVR is if you edit a work rest change, you just need to make a comment. Made a mistake. So it's easy to correct and update. So now I'll update that. So now when I go back to my activity cards, the duration for this activity is now 1 hour rather than 1 hour and 4 minutes rather than 4 minutes because I moved it back by 1 hour. And the duration of the current activity is essentially a ticking clock, so that'll tick up with time. So you can see the durations of each of the activities throughout your shift. It's also possible to insert an activity. So say if I wanted to insert I neglected to add a rest break somewhere in between here, I can also insert that. I'll return to my shift now. It shows my total shift now is 1 hour and 7 minutes because I wound back the start of the first activity. What I could do now is create another work rest change. Now I'm going to change back to work and I'll update. And so now I've got 3 work rest changes. So I've got a rest which was only for 3 minutes, and another work which has just begun. If I go to end a shift, what we'll see, if I try and end a shift in work mode, it delivers what's a really important message. If you end your shift in work mode, the time between now and when you start your next shift will count as work. So unless you're really intending to work while you're not in a shift, you should update your status to rest before ending your shift. So I'll update my status to rest and I'll end my shift. So now I'm in rest mode, I don't get that warning, and I have the option to maintain my current activity and end the shift. Also note, if you've made several mistakes throughout the shift and you find that it's easier for you to delete the shift rather than go and edit your activities, you can also do that. That'll delete all of the activities in the current shift. So I'll maintain my current activity. You can enter a shift comment. This is optional and it's not seen by the NHVR, it's just seen by your record keeper, and it might be to do with something operational associated with the company you're working for. And you can also enter a total shift length. And again, this is not related to the NHVR, it's more to do with an internal bookkeeping within your company. So for example, if your company uses the Hubfleet EWD as a way of tracking hours worked for timesheeting and payments and so on, this could be used for your timesheet. So I'll leave that as is, I won't edit that, and I'll just end my shift. When you end your shift, you need to acknowledge the declaration that the NHVR require you to acknowledge. So you've got to acknowledge that you're about to submit a work rest records, and that once you make these entries, you cannot change them once they've been submitted. To do that, to make sure it's you who's doing the work rest changes, you enter your device PIN and then you confirm. So now we've completed a shift and we have some work rest changes. So the dashboard screen now looks a little more interesting. You can see this is basically a calendar up here that we can slide left or right. Today's the 1st of August, so I can slide that left or right and it shows me a summary of everything I've done on this particular calendar date. If I scroll down, you can see that from the standard solo work option, I've got metrics about the sort of key long periods in the standard solo rule set. So I've worked 1 hour and 5 minutes in the last 24 hours and in the last 7 days, and you can see the limits for the standard solo. It also shows you your night rests. So you can see all the night rests you've had over the last 14 days. So according to the standard solo rule set, you need to have 2 night rest breaks as well as 2 night rest breaks taken on consecutive days. If you haven't had a night rest break, you'll see the blue circle with a cross through it to indicate that you didn't have a night rest, and you'll be able to sort of see in advance when you need a night rest. And there's also information about 24-hour rests shown below. We have dashboards for the different rule sets. So for example, if you choose the BFM solo rule set, we have that information there, and any of the other rule sets, they're available. Okay, finally I wanted to talk about the compliance view screen. You can access the compliance view screen by clicking on the compliance view option at the bottom. This opens a graphical representation of your compliance records. So all your information is displayed along the top, including your name, your license number, your registration, your work option, and your time zone. All of your records are presented in a fairly conventional way if you're used to keeping a written work diary, and all the times are stored in your base time zone, regardless of what the local time zone was where you made those work rest changes. So there's an information icon here on the side that gives you some more information about what each of these features do. An important feature is that when if you're intercepted by an authorized officer, you can click on the lock icon at the top of the compliance view, the upper left-hand corner. And what that does is it locks your device in the compliance view. So the authorized officer cannot go back through any other parts of the electronic work diary and cannot access any other parts of the screen. Because if I try and go back, it asks for my device PIN. So the only way to go back and get out of this view is to enter your device PIN. Okay, that's it for this quick start video. Please look out for our other videos on our YouTube channel. Just search Hubfleet on YouTube. If you've got any questions, you can get in touch with us via our website, which is hubfleet.com.au, or you can get in touch with me personally at James, and my email address is james@hubfleet.com.au. Thanks for listening.